You know, whether you're launching a new product, building a skyscraper, or hey, even just planning a party, there is one skill that can make the difference between a wild success and total disaster. And that is project risk management. I know it sounds super formal, but today we're going to break it down into a simple, powerful framework that literally anyone can use. Okay, let's get into it. So why is this such a big deal? Well, get a load of this statistic. About 50% of all projects overspend their budget. 50%. That's a coin flip on whether your hard work is going to stay on track financially. It just goes to show how absolutely crucial it is to have a real plan for risk before you even start. To make this all feel a bit more real, let's just forget about huge corporate projects for a second. Instead, I want you to imagine this. You are in charge of a small outdoor graduation party. There are going to be 200 people there, and it's tomorrow. You've got the chairs, the food's ordered, the speakers are ready, everything seems perfect. This little party is going to be our case study for this whole explainer. So you've got what looks like the perfect plan. But here's the thing. The central question of risk management is always lurking in the background, and that question is, what could possibly go wrong? Seriously, answering that question systematically is the heart and soul of what we're about to do. But before we can manage anything, we've got to get our terms straight, because there's actually a huge difference between two words we tend to use all the time as if they're the same: uncertainty and risk. Trust me, understanding this distinction is the key to taking control. Let's start with uncertainty. I want you to think of uncertainty as a thick fog. It's just a pure absence of information. We don't have the knowledge we need. So for our party, uncertainty is that general nagging feeling that something might happen, but we don't know what, we don't know when, or how bad it could be. It's just this big, vague cloud of what ifs. Now, risk is what happens when we start to shine a flashlight into that fog. A risk is a specific, uncertain event that, if it happens, will definitely affect our goals. So it's not a vague feeling anymore. It's a defined possibility. Like, hey, it might rain, or what if the caterer is late? And this right here perfectly illustrates that relationship. On the left, with zero information, we have total uncertainty. It's complete fog. But as we get more information, say we check the weather forecast, we start to reduce that uncertainty. It doesn't just vanish, but it transforms into something we can actually measure and manage: risk. The more you know, the less uncertainty you have, and the more clearly you can see the specific risks you're up against. So how do we actually do this in a structured way? Well, the whole process can be broken down into 3 essential steps. First, we identify the risks. Then, second, we analyze them to figure out which ones really matter. And finally, third, we decide on a response. This simple game plan is our roadmap from here on out. All right, let's dive right into step 1, and let's apply it to our party. The goal here is pretty simple. Get every possible worry out of our heads and down on paper. No idea is too small or too silly at this stage. We are literally brainstorming for disaster. Okay, so for our graduation party, what could go wrong? Well, the most obvious one for an outdoor event is bad weather, right? Rain. But what else? The food supplier could be late. The sound system could totally fail. Oh, what if we don't have enough seats? Or a guest has a severe unexpected allergy. The power could go out, and just like that, see what we did? We turned that vague fog of uncertainty into a concrete list of identifiable risks. So now we have this list, which is great, but not all risks are created equal. I mean, a full-on power outage is probably a much bigger deal than running out of a few napkins. This brings us to step 2, analysis. We need a way to prioritize all this. We need to figure out just how bad each of these could really be. And believe it or not, we can prioritize them with a beautifully simple formula. The risk score is just the likelihood of something happening multiplied by the impact it would have if it did happen. That's it. How likely is it, and how much will it hurt? This gives us a number, a score, we can use to compare completely different risks against each other. It's so useful. Professionals, project managers, they use a tool that looks just like this. It's called a risk matrix to visualize all these scores. Along the bottom, you've got likelihood, from very low to very high. And up the side, you've got impact on the same scale. The risks that land in that top red corner, the ones with high likelihood and high impact, those are your red alerts. Those are the ones that demand your immediate attention. So let's try this with our party. The risk is rain. Let's say we check the forecast and it gives an 80% chance of showers. Okay, that's pretty likely. We'll score the likelihood as high. Let's call it a 4 out of 5. And what's the impact of a downpour on an outdoor event with no cover? It's catastrophic. It ruins everything. So that's very high, a 5 out of 5. So you take 4 times 5 and you get a risk score of 20. That is a very high priority risk. Getting a score of 20 is a huge red flag. It tells us we absolutely cannot just cross our fingers and hope it doesn't rain. And this brings us to the final, crucial step in our process, risk response. Now that we know what our biggest threat is, the big question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, we've got a few core strategies to choose from. First, we could try to avoid or reduce the risk. For rain, this is pretty straightforward. Rent a big tent or book a backup indoor venue. Simple. Or we could transfer the risk. This usually means buying insurance. So if the party gets canceled because of the weather, the insurance policy covers our financial losses. And finally, there's retention. This is where you consciously decide to just accept the risk. In this case, maybe you just buy a bunch of umbrellas and towels and hope for the best. Now, what's really interesting here is that the goal of risk management isn't to eliminate every single risk. That's just impossible. Business, and frankly life, is all about taking smart risks. You've heard the saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The whole point of this process is to control risk, not to hide from it. It's about making sure you're taking the right risks for the right rewards. And that right there is the real beauty of this framework. We used a simple graduation party to explain it, but those 3 steps, identify, analyze, respond, are exactly the same whether you're managing a multi-billion-dollar construction project or just planning your next family vacation. The risks change, the stakes get higher, but the fundamental logic, it's identical. So let's wrap this up with a question for you. Think about the next big thing on your plate. It could be at work, it could be at home, whatever. What's that big fog of uncertainty that you're facing? And more importantly, what's the biggest risk hiding in that fog that you haven't really identified, analyzed, and planned for yet?